So, time for another budget custom because I needed a new can of Mr. Super Clear and I'm bad at planning, so I ran out smack in the middle of a custom doll, which meant I needed expedited shipping, of course, which meant I had to pay $40 for this can. So after I ordered that, I got to thinking, what supplies can I get from the internet that are less than $40? As the internet is full of terrible, wonderful things. And this is the list of things I came up with. The only 5 supplies I ended up adding were a pair of scissors, a ballpoint pen, tissues, nail polish remover, and a black permanent marker. So it's pretty much all totally supplies from Amazon.com. I collected everything as it came, and here's everything I used. Again, minus a pair of scissors, a ballpoint pen, tissues, nail polish remover, and a black permanent marker. For the concept, my original idea was to make a sort of inked up biker chick, I guess, out of an operetta. And I ordered leather gloves to cut up into a leather jacket, but that went horribly, so I had to scratch that plan. The gloves were way too piecemeal to get anything workable out of them once I took them apart. So instead, I went to work on the jeans, cutting 2 tubes wide enough to fit around the doll's legs and butt, which I then cut out of the denim arm protector sleeves I got. Then I sewed up the crotch and hemmed the bottoms and tops before sewing up one leg, across, and then down the other, and then used the pliers to turn them right side out, add a piece of elastic, cut off of the denim sleeves, and you have a pair of jeans. This pack of fabric was a great find, I thought. Lots of pattern options. I really like it. I settled on this striped fabric for the top and cut out a strip so I could use this cool twisted design for her shirt. After adding snaps to it, I gathered the front to make it a little bit more fitted. Then I gathered a strip of fabric that was originally about 2.5 times the length I needed, so that it was the same size as the doll's waist, and used Gorilla Glue as fray check, which actually worked really well. I used it on all the fabric that I cut for this project. I sewed the gathered strip of fabric to elastic that I cut that was the same size as the doll's waist. Then I put it on the doll and attached it to the straps of the top where they met, leaving the middle triangle open for a more interesting design. I had to split the back waist strap in order to be able to get the shirt on and off, so to tighten it up so the straps don't fall down while on the doll, I added a link from this chain in the back to keep it in place. Now for her tote bag, I wanted it to be sturdy, so I cut the base rectangle out of more denim first, but I wanted it to have varying texture. So I glued the denim to the front side of the lightest color thin cotton fabric I had, so the lighter wrong side would be the actual visible part, and then I painted it white to make it look like a canvas bag. Another piece of denim I cut will be the bottom of the bag for a little variance, and I added a little distressing with some black and brown acrylic paint for a little more interest. After disassembling the brown leather bracelet, I used 2 of the thin strips as cording to cover the seam between the denim and the white canvas. Once dry, I fold it so that right sides are together and sewed it as well as fray checked the edges with more Gorilla Glue. Once both sides were dry, I turned it right side out and glued another piece of the bracelet around the top to cover that raw edge. Finally, the 2 braided pieces of the bracelet I glue on as straps for the bag, and at this point I decided I wanted the bag to have a charm, and I decided a cute owl keychain was a good plan. The piece of circular foam from my sewing kit that held the pins, and stabbed a hole in it with one of the pins to make a cute little foam burb keychain. Shoes for this doll were basically me panicking because I totally forgot to order supplies specifically for shoes, so these were like super off the cuff. First, I took more of that 1/2-inch elastic from the denim sleeve protectors and cut 2 pieces that fit the doll's ankle and sewed them into loops. Then I flipped them so that the neater edge was on the outside and cut another strip of fabric, which I wrapped over the elastic seam and sewed down to create finished edges. For the sole of the shoes, I cut out 4 pieces of cardboard from packaging the same size as the bottom of the doll's foot, 2 for each. I then glued the soles onto the strip of fabric and bent the cardboard to fit the curve of the foot. Taking more elastic, I cut a piece in half widthwise and sewed it over the toe area so it was a bit thinner, testing it to make sure it would fit properly as I went. Once that was done, I glued the second cardboard sole on the inside of each shoe to cover the edges of the elastic toe band. Before gluing the heel down though, I cut off the tops of the pins from the sewing kit and used the pliers to put a 45-degree-ish bend in the top before pushing it through the fabric and lower sole, and then I glued down the inside sole on top of it to seal it in. Once dry, I coated both heels in a layer of Gorilla Glue for strength and let that dry completely before painting the bottoms of the shoes black, including the heels, and then painting the insoles white. I added the buttons from the sewing kit over the toe straps before sealing the painted parts of the shoe with the Warpaints matte varnish. Once that was dry, I used the buttons as platforms to glue on the tiniest fabric roses I have ever made. Seriously, these were absolutely tedious and ridiculous, but I also kind of love them. Now for the face-up. Remove factory paint as usual. This time I was out of acetone, which meant I had to use regular nail polish remover that I stole out of the bathroom cabinet, so it took quite a bit longer than normal to get this doll's face off. For this design, I wanted a cool, buzzed, short sides kind of look, but I wanted to leave the top long and do a sort of ombre gradient from black to red. So I left the black hair in the front and removed most of the red hair except for a strip down the middle. I made sure to remove hair from the entire hairline because the method I'm going to use to make the gradient bleeds and stains, notoriously. So I don't want it anywhere near the skin that will be visible when the face-up is done. Using the Mungyo pastels I got for this project, I begin to blush the face, and I also blush the body at this point as well. However, the Warpaint sealant I have was so liquid and watery that it sort of washed away the initial blushing, which was very frustrating. I come back in and darken the blushing with some purple pastel, making it extra dark this time since I now know the sealant will wash it out a bit. I also gave her some dark eyebrow shapes and give her lips and cheeks some color. Then into the watercolor pencils. These actually didn't go too badly, especially for detailing the eyebrows. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I figured that they would kind of be not so great because they were Crayola brand, but anyway, the sealant I think was what failed the watercolor pencils here because it didn't provide enough grip or allow them to be opaque enough for me to use them for much else besides the eyebrow hairs and sketching the eyes. I might revisit the Crayola watercolor pencils in the future using some Mr. Super Clear to see if I can get a little more color payoff from them. Pulling out the acrylics, first I painted all the parts of her scalp that are going to be black instead of red, including the space between the black bangs and the red hair I left intact. Now to paint the face using acrylics. Once the face was done, I mixed up some brown acrylic paint and proceeded to paint in her tattoos with a few more flourishes and added details. I was trying to make this look kind of like henna. I continued painting down her body, and it was here that I made this little swirl that I thought looked like two birds facing each other, sort of like lovebirds. So that's where the sort of bird theme originally came from, and I sort of reinforced it with that cute little keychain for her bag. Remember the ends of the pin that we cut off to make the heels for the shoes? Well, they happen to make the perfect earrings if you add a little Gorilla Glue to what's left of the pin post before pushing it into the existing pierced earring holes. I also painted a small piece of black fabric and glued on the third pin head for a little choker. To finish her hair, first I take flocking powder and glue it onto the parts of the scalp that I painted black using Gorilla Glue. This wasn't the best option because the glue is pretty thick and viscous, but it doesn't really play nice with water since it's a solvent-based glue, so I couldn't really thin it out. It got the job done though, and I had just enough black flocking powder to do all the areas I needed to, and that was with brushing off all the excess and reapplying it to new areas. Now, this is where the black permanent marker comes in. I colored a gradient in the red hair from the base, fading out towards the ends. I do not recommend doing this willy-nilly to color any doll hair. The flocking powder seems to have stopped it from seeping down onto her face or staining her scalp or anything. And since the other hair is already black, I don't know if it transferred onto that hair or not. So far, it hasn't transferred to anything else it is rubbed up against, or my hands or anything. If you guys want an update to know how the ink is holding up down the line, let me know, and I'm sure I can arrange that. I did blot off some of the excess ink with a tissue, so that may have helped a little bit. Once I had the preliminary ombre color down, I proceeded to French braid her hair with small sections, using the original tiny black elastic from her hair to tie it off. I then trimmed the excess red hair to a more reasonable length and went back and added a little more black permanent marker to make the ombre and the braid a little bit more pronounced. The last thing I did was cut a strip of fabric, sew it into a tube with angled ends, flip it right side out, then cut the head and the point off of the safety pin from the sewing kit and flatten it out with my pliers so I could put it inside the tube before sewing up said tube and wrapping it around the ponytail like one of those cute bunny ear headbands. And with that, it's time to dress her up. Keeping with the bird theme, I've decided to call this doll Ava. I had a lot of fun making this one, figuring out what I could repurpose for different accessories, all that. Also, she's way different than my original concept doodles, but that's okay. It was a sort of do what you can, make what you have supplies for kind of doll. If you liked this budget repaint, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe for more customs, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!